to watch me be in a glass cage.
All women, on some scale, are doing what Bonnie Blue is doing.
I'm a clear example of what women have fought for years.
Newest album. I'm a woman and I am very disappointed.
Is looking like an ad from the 1950s.
Guys only want one thing.
130 barely legal 18-year-olds.
That's disgusting.
Let's talk about feminism and the illusion of empowerment being sold to us today. Take Sydney Sweeney, an actress who recently starred in a soap ad that resembled a teaser for an OF account more than an actual skincare campaign.
Hello, you dirty little boys. Are you interested in my body? Wash.
Her bathwater was even included in the product. And yes, men were actually buying it, actually supporting this.
With her real bathwater in the soap.
I'm like shaking right now.
So like she actually bathed in this water, like Sydney Sweeney.
Then there's Sabrina Carpenter, who posed on all fours with the caption, "Man's best friend." Some called it clever, others called it degrading. But either way, it did exactly what it was meant to do. Generate attention. But the real question is, attention at what cost? Yes, these women are benefiting from the money and the fame, but is that really the only mark of freedom? And if we've moved past the systems that objectified women, why are we now celebrating their return? Just because more women are the ones cashing the check? Take a more extreme version of this objectification, for example, OF. A very small percentage of women in this hyper-sexualized digital space, like OF or the viral pop branding, make significant money. These are the ones with massive platforms, PR teams, and a look that fits the current trend. They're highly visible, which creates the illusion that every woman could win by marketing herself this way, or by selling her body, therefore guaranteeing easy money and success. But statistically, most women who attempt to profit from sexual content don't earn meaningful income, especially not over time. On these platforms that function as digital prostitution, only the top fraction of these prostitutes claim the overwhelming majority of profit. Most others barely scrape by. Some even lose money trying to uphold this fantasy. But regardless of how much is made, the cost is the same. Their dignity. Take Bonnie Blue, for example, who went viral for claiming that she had slept with 1,000 men in 12 hours. She now announced a new stunt, a human petting zoo.
Men that pay to watch me be in a glass cage. I'm going to be tied up in a glass box for a couple of days, and my body is for everyone.
The goal was to go viral, to grow her platform, and cash in later, resulting in copycat prostitutes. She recently spoke to Andrew Tate, a deeply moral man.
The reason I respect what Bonnie's doing is because Bonnie's making her own money with her own brains and being very honest and open about what she's doing. All women, on some scale, are doing what Bonnie Blue is doing. However, Bonnie Blue's just the best at it. You can either have a bunch of customers with only or you can have one customer called a husband or boyfriend. I'm quite externalized about things. And if I go to jail, I'll enjoy the experience of jail.
Just because something might pacify men doesn't mean it's good or ethical. Bonnie claims that her work is feminist because it's her choice. But choice alone doesn't make something liberating. A woman can choose to do something degrading. Her freedom, though, doesn't mean the act itself uplifts women. Just like choosing to stay in an abusive relationship isn't empowering just because it was a choice.
I'd happily take an 18-year-old on their birthday, like the closer to 18. I just want them, to be young, innocent. I want to strip them from that. I want to take their innocence.
Do you think you're a good role model for women?
I'm a clear example of what women have fought for years. Of
what?
Taking control of your body.
He is a clear example of what women have been fighting for years. Absolutely correct.
Tate also equates feminism with cultural decay, but real feminism, especially the earlier waves, was about protecting women from abuse, securing voting rights, and creating a dignified space for women in society. Originally, feminism did not instruct women to commodify themselves, but Tate seems to confuse feminism with hypersexual consumer culture, and a culture that reduces women to products also trains men to become passive, detached consumers. And in the long run, no one wins. But in a world addicted to dopamine hits and instant gratification, too many men and women are too numbed, too distracted, and too enslaved by the system to recognize the long-term costs or what it's slowly turning them into. I do believe in the roots, where it started, and what it was meant to protect. First wave feminism was foundational, okay? It focused on legal personhood, on securing a woman's right to vote, to own property, to access education. Figures like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Stanton, they demanded basic recognition under the law, and they won. Then came second wave feminism, and that expanded the conversation to workplace rights, to family dynamics, and a woman's ability to define her own life, not just legally, but culturally. And this wave insisted that women were more than domestic helpers. They were full human beings deserving of agency and social respect. But even then, there were missteps. In trying to escape traditional limitations, the movement sometimes equated freedom with detachment, casual. sex, and emotional disconnection, as if mimicking acceptable male behavior was the only path to liberation. Then came third wave feminism, focusing on identity, on sex positivity, allowing each woman to define her own values. But this also gave rise to choice feminism, the idea that any choice a woman makes is inherently liberating, no matter how degrading or manipulated it may be. That's a philosophy I, and many women today, reject. And now, chaos. We see liberation marketed through hookup culture, practically naked or straight up naked women showing up to award ceremonies. How brave. That's why I align with a version of feminism that champions rights, safety, a vision that honors both ambition and motherhood, but understands not every choice is liberating just because it's made freely, in a society that rewards the wrong things. I do not believe that things like OF should be normalized, let alone celebrated. I am not anti-feminist, but I am anti-dehumanization. But I also do understand why many women and men are tempted to abandon the word feminist altogether, because it's been warped. But while some women in the West are performing feminism for brand deals, for likes, millions of women around the world are still dying for it. In Iran, women are beaten and imprisoned for the simple act of showing their hair. In Afghanistan, girls are barred from attending school beyond the 6th grade. Across parts of Africa and South Asia, child marriage is still rampant. In many nations, women cannot speak freely without risking their lives. So no, I won't abandon the word completely, because if we walk away from it entirely, we hand the word over to those who never intended to protect it, only to profit from its decay. At its core, feminism is the belief that women are fully human, equal in dignity, equal in worth, and deserving of safety, of sovereignty and purpose, and so are men. Not because we are the same as men, but because our differences deserve to be valued, not erased. Hi, trans women are women with absolutely no biological differences crowd. When women are degraded, men are not thriving either, because a culture that reduces women to this inevitably trains men to become disconnected, to become addicted and numb. But again, real feminism does not demonize men. It dignifies them. It says you are not just a wallet, you are not a predator by default. You are created with the capacity to lead, to build, to protect, and that version of masculinity is not toxic, it's necessary. So I don't believe feminism should be thrown out completely. I believe it should be refined, reclaimed, and restored to something worthy. Because if we don't define what real empowerment looks like, someone else will. What we're seeing with celebrities like Sweeney or Carpenter isn't new. Women in entertainment have often walked a fine line between agency and objectification. But what's changed is the vocabulary. What was once labeled exploitation is now reframed as empowerment. What used to be called the male gaze is now dressed up as owning your narrative. I am not against feminism. I am against what feminism has become. Modern feminism has been hijacked by hypersexualization, by branding, by political extremes. It's no longer about dignity or the safety and well-being of women, and it's no longer about protecting women. Modern feminism also often treats motherhood like failure and hookup culture like freedom. Femininity is either mocked or monetized depending on which version turns the most profit. And pornography, it's not just warping the minds of men, it's convincing women that if they choose it, it's somehow now empowering. But intention does not purify degradation. The culture is sick, and when a culture is sick, it conditions them into degrading themselves, calls it freedom, and then dares anyone to question it. Speak up, and you're told you're not a girl's girl. You're shaming, you're a prude, you're internalizing misogyny for not encouraging women to objectify themselves for men's approval. Yeah, okay, you wouldn't be doing it if a man wasn't paying you. And it trains men to cheer them on, consume that content, and financially reward that behavior. I believe in a feminism that is principled, protective, and spiritually grounded. One that recognizes our value as men and women, not in sameness, but in sacred difference. A feminism that upholds equality, but also cherishes dignity and discernment. So I hold the label to a higher standard, because women and men deserve more than what we're being sold today. Let's take a closer look at what we're seeing in the culture right now. Take Sabrina Carpenter. Once a Disney star, has leaned into increasingly provocative imagery. In one of her older music videos, she dances in a short dress, black veil inside of a church while portraying violence against men, a recurring theme in her work. Now this symbolism isn't subtle, it's designed to provoke, and it works. With hits like Espresso, she's become a pop sensation, and her visuals have become even more hypersexual. She often simulates sex acts on stage during her performances, even though a large portion of her audience is young girls. I believe that the backlash against Sabrina isn't just about what she's doing, I think it's more about how she's packaging it. Her image from afar is soft, safe, innocent. She's petite, blonde, pastel coded. These aesthetic choices appeal to many teen girls. So when she leans into sexualized performances, it feels like a betrayal of the image she was originally sold under. And recently she released a song mocking immature men called Man-Child, only to follow it up with a provocative album cover where she poses submissively in a dog-like manner, and many find it tone-deaf, especially considering her large underage audience.
Whether or not we get the context later, her releasing the album cover without any context, maybe she's making a point, maybe it's irony, maybe it's satire, maybe it's blah blah blah, and maybe it's also in poor taste, and maybe it's also disappointing.
This is my commentary as a fan. It just comes off a bit try-hardy, a bit misogynistic.
The firehouse burning down is ironic. The unsinkable ship sinking is ironic. A woman who is seen as a subservient object, posing as a subservient object, is not ironic. It is not satirical. It is tone deaf.
So is it a critique of objectification or just participation in it? It's participation in it. By contrast, sexualized content in rap, for example, especially female rap, is expected. Artists like Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, they are unapologetically hypersexual. Their objectification is brash, loud, and overt. But because we've come to expect it, we rarely critique it. It's not surprising, but normalization does not equal moral neutrality. Sabrina wraps objectification in innocence, in soft lighting, pastel bows, cute skirts, and that confusion makes it harder to name and to critique. But both extremes are corrosive. Whether it's filming a music video that's glamorizing violence against men, or posing like a pet at their feet, in Carpenter's case, or the more aggressive, explicit music videos in rap, for example. Objectification is still objectification, whether you're blonde or brunette, or black or white. And too often it's accompanied by lyrics and visuals that glorify aggression, violence, and the dehumanization of women and men alike. If you're a man with younger sisters or future daughters, think about this. This isn't just about personal taste, it's about the moral direction of our culture.
At first I thought Sabrina Carpenter's constant nods to the 1950s was cute, but now I'm a little bit concerned because, girl, why did we reference Lolita in the last music video? And now the album art is looking like an ad from the 1950s that are like, women need to know their place.
Why it's so upsetting to see mainstream artists reference Lolita when you know the full story. As Nabokov said, this was never supposed to be a romance book. Seeing this photo shoot and then seeing the cover to her newest album, where she's on her knees being manhandled and grabbed by the hair, I'm a woman and I am very disappointed.
Come put something big in my Sydney Sweeney, an actress partnering with Dr. Squatch to sell soap allegedly made with her bathwater, has some fans divided because some call it clever marketing, others say it's regressive and humiliating. I think it's both, because some men will buy this, unfortunately. It is sad, but they will, and she will make a lot of money. But that doesn't mean that it's not degrading. This is not done to survive. Sweeney is a successful actress. This isn't desperation, it's strategic sexualization. And while she jokes that fans have always asked for this,
Guys only want one thing. You'll finally get the attention you deserve.
Hello, you dirty little boys.
the boys, sorry.
Sydney, what are you doing?
What the fuck?
That's exactly the problem. Giving into a market that exists because of a pornified culture does not liberate women. And that drew comparisons to Belle Delphine, another prostitute infamous for selling her actual bathwater. And again, men bought it. But the fact that a Hollywood actress is now blurring the lines in this way is troubling. Some people cheer it on. Get that bag, girl, do what you gotta do. It doesn't even matter as long as you're making money. I see something else. I see a culture in decline. Today, women are not rewarded for their talent or integrity, but for their ability to be sexualized, to sell their bathwater. And yet, many are shocked when aging, for example, is treated like a failure, a curse. But how could it be otherwise? What else should we expect in a culture that equates a woman's worth with her desirability? When beauty fades, so does her perceived value. That's why young women are pressured to start Botox at 20, and 12-year-old girls are sold harsh skincare routines to preserve themselves. In this system, 30 is already too old, and soon 25 will be too, then younger. This isn't new, of course. Women have always been judged by their appearance, but what has changed is the response. Because for generations, many women, especially those grounded in spiritual belief, have pushed back. They believe that we are made in the image of God, that our worth is not defined by smooth skin or youthful features, man or woman, and that aging is a gift because not everyone gets to grow old. But now, instead of resisting that pressure to look 16 forever, many have begun to embrace it, because today it's been reframed as a choice. The very culture that once diminished women is no longer being challenged. It's being monetized and falsely labeled as liberation, a simple rebranding with the same toxic messaging. And now, countless women are performing for it voluntarily. This is the illusion that too many are buying into. Feminism that measures worth not by character or wisdom or spirit, but by how well a woman appeals to men, how openly she discusses her procedures, for example, and is a girl's girl, how willing she is to turn her body into a blueprint for other women to imitate in pursuit of male approval. What doctor fixed that part of your body? Tell us, girly. Don't gatekeep. That was such a feminist thing of you to do. Let me go change my appearance completely as well. So the question remains, who is this empowerment really serving? And when someone asks, but hasn't sex appeal always sold? Yes, to a point, but the boundaries now are completely gone.
I want to sleep with 130 barely legal 18-year-olds.
That's disgusting. I love it.
My nephew's 18.
Send him to me then.
No, I'd absolutely never do that.
Hopefully I'll find him in my queue one day.
No, I don't think he will, because he has like respect for himself.
A generation of boys is growing up equating intimacy with performance, an addiction, and the age that these boys are getting exposed to this explicit content is getting younger and younger. Same with girls. And women are told that selling access to their bodies is liberating, as long as it's their choice. Men are told to buy, click, scroll, and view that as connection. But it's just degrading. It's dehumanizing on both sides. So the result is real intimacy becomes rare, genuine respect becomes foreign, and our collective dignity is quietly eroded. If you care about the women in your life, your partner, your family, your friends, this should concern you especially. Men have been told you're guilty just for existing. Movements that said believe women, they were meant to address real injustices, but somehow spiraled into moral absolutism. Believe all women. And that's where skepticism was forbidden and nuance was lost. Believe all women, believe all men? Both men and women are capable of lying. Therefore, you should not believe someone just because of their gender. Look at each case individually and then decide. Combine that with a rise in pornography addiction, decline in dating, actually seeking real relationships and connections, and the impossible demand to be both hypermasculine and hyper-emotional. So then it's no wonder why so many men feel directionless. So everything sucks for everyone. Bye! Thanks for watching. Just kidding. But interestingly, the red pill and modern feminism, though they present themselves as polar opposites, often end up mirroring each other in their most toxic forms. It's the horseshoe effect in action, right? Both begin with real pain, men who feel discarded or invisible, or women who feel used, dismissed. But instead of healing that pain, both movements funnel it into blame. Red pill culture insists it's all women's fault, while modern feminism echoes back. It's all men's fault. The result is bitterness, mental health issues, and loneliness disguised as empowerment. Red pill men harden themselves to avoid vulnerability, hyperfixating on status and casual sex, which only attracts shallow women, therefore reinforcing their worst beliefs about women. Meanwhile, modern feminist spaces glorify emotional detachment and sexual validation, leaving women isolated and resentful. In both cases, intimacy becomes nearly impossible. The truth is, healing won't come from choosing either extreme or demonizing an entire gender. Surprise, surprise! It takes responsibility, emotional honesty, and the courage to heal. Not for anyone else's sake, but for yourself. Real feminism does not vilify men. It says you're not just a consumer or a walking wallet. And women, we're not just commodities or a dishwasher. We're both human beings, different, yes, but both essential. Many men feel called to protect and to provide, just like many women feel called to nurture, build or raise families. Neither path should be mocked or reversed out of ideological spite. The goal is freedom with responsibility, not forced role reversal. There is a version of feminism that doesn't make men the villain. It tells men, you matter, your integrity matters, your mental health matters, just like ours. It doesn't have to be either or. Duh, like no shit. This really should not be controversial. In a society where men are healed, women are safer. When men lead with strength and purpose, women are free to flourish without fear. You don't have to agree with every branch of feminism to stand for dignity. You just have to care about truth and be willing to build something better. At its core, feminism once fought for a woman's protection from coercion, assault, and exploitation at home, in the workplace, in medicine. But somewhere along the way, that message changed completely because today, bodily autonomy is often equated with the right to objectify yourself. And the more explicit, the more celebrated, as long as it's your choice. But not all choices are created equal. A decision made under the weight of loneliness, for example, social conditioning, or financial desperation, is not inherently empowering. Around the world, millions of women are forced into prostitution, are trafficked, are coerced, and stripped of all autonomy. Meanwhile, in the West, women are encouraged to sell themselves by choice. But is it really empowerment when the decision is shaped by a culture that rewards objectification? Just because it's voluntary, though, doesn't mean it's healthy. And calling something a choice doesn't make it wise. You can choose to become a serial killer. Are we gonna call that empowering? Let's tolerate that, right? It's so empowering because they chose to become a serial killer. No. We say don't reduce women to objects, but then we applaud when women do it to themselves, as long as it's framed as feminist. And the men who champion this lifestyle, who preach that youth and sexual appeal are a woman's highest currency, would they speak that way to their mothers? Or is the standard reserved only for women they've personally dehumanized? So as we say to the women who often hate men simply for being men, calling it fatherless behavior, the reverse is true as well. This is called motherless behavior. Having these sorts of issues in the family is not their fault, of course, but it is your responsibility as a grown man or a grown woman to heal whatever's causing that resentment towards an entire gender. Because that's a little cuckoo. That is not normal at all. And when it comes to objectification, especially online, ask yourself, would this behavior still happen if no one was watching? No likes, no buyers, men, no cash flow? Would the liberation still feel so empowering? No. In hookup culture, promiscuity, that doesn't just harm women. Men too, okay? It teaches them to disconnect, to chase quantity over connection, to wear emotional detachment like a badge of honor, sleep around, be a man whore, a player. Because for men, that's been framed as power. Ew. But underneath that performance is a void, a failure to cultivate discipline, self-control, character, emotional depth, and real self-worth. Same goes for the women who choose to participate and promote this sort of culture. It takes two to tango. Women are responding to demand. If no one paid, there would be nothing to sell. The market exists because men reward it. So again, who is winning? Not the women, who are left wondering why this admiration doesn't lead to real affection or connection. Not the men, who mistake consumption for connection and find themselves lonely after every high. And definitely not the younger generation, who are inheriting a world where shallow hypersexuality is promoted. The winners are the industries, the platforms, the empires, the music labels, the apps that benefit from people's confusion and addiction. That's why empowerment must mean more than branding your own objectification. So it is not progress when the systems that used to exploit women just hand them the tools to do it to themselves. We need to raise the standard again for both men and women. And that's all for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed and you want to see more like this, then make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Also comment your thoughts below, like and share the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.